Hold your breath. This next story is pretty incredible.
Hold your breath. This next story is truly incredible. When a team of modern salvage divers recently plunged into the Red Sea, they weren't chasing glittering treasure or forgotten riches. They were chasing a mystery nearly 50 years old. A whisper of a legend that the chariot wheels of an ancient pharaoh lay buried beneath the waves, remnants of a catastrophic event dismissed by many as mere fiction. What they found left them utterly stunned. It wasn't clean. It wasn't smooth. It was encrusted and ancient, yet undeniably there. Scattered across the seabed were shocking discoveries that would confirm some of the most profound biblical mysteries, things a skeptical world had long ago dismissed as pure fantasy. But here's the unsettling twist. What these divers saw suggests that something truly cataclysmic happened in the Red Sea, an event so profound, so devastating, that its implications are far more chilling than any legend could convey. This wasn't just a dive. It was an audacious challenge to centuries of accepted history, a journey into a hidden past that someone, it seemed, desperately wanted to keep buried. The modern salvage divers' mission began quietly, almost clandestinely, late in 2024. A small, hand-picked team of professional salvage divers and marine tech specialists operating under the radar gathered in Aqaba, Jordan. Their objective? To re-explore a forgotten stretch of the Red Sea seabed near Nuweiba Beach, on the Egyptian side of the Gulf of Aqaba. But this was no ordinary dive. They weren't looking for sunken ships laden with gold, nor lost cargo from modern wrecks. They were hunting a historical ghost, a spectral echo left behind by a maverick explorer named Ron Wyatt. Nearly 50 years ago, Wyatt had made the audacious claim of discovering the very wheels of a chariot that once belonged to Pharaoh Ramesses II. The team itself was a rare blend of hardened marine engineers, former military divers, and intrepid underwater archaeologists. Some worked discreetly, almost anonymously, their identities shielded from public scrutiny. Their equipment was state-of-the-art, cutting-edge sonar imaging systems, deep-sea drones with high-resolution cameras capable of piercing the murky depths, and submersible scanners that could read subtle changes in sediment density. Yet, despite this formidable technology and professional dedication, this mission nearly didn't happen. Early attempts to secure funding through official archaeological channels failed spectacularly. Mainstream government institutions and prestigious universities dismissed the project outright, scoffing at the notion of revisiting such fringe claims. One Israeli antiquities official reportedly told them, with a dismissive wave, "There's nothing there but coral and conspiracy." Worse, several governments quietly, yet firmly, warned them against diving in the area, citing obscure marine preservation laws. It became chillingly clear someone, somewhere, didn't want these particular waters disturbed, as if a profound secret lay guarded by the depths themselves. Yet, the team pressed on, fueled by an almost religious zeal. A small, determined group of wealthy private backers stepped in. These quiet enthusiasts of biblical archaeology had followed Ron Wyatt's controversial story for decades, captivated by its raw, unfiltered challenge to conventional wisdom. While some were simply driven by pure curiosity, the rest were profoundly, religiously motivated, convinced that biblical truths lay hidden, waiting to be revealed. They funded the entire operation with zero publicity and full discretion, a ghost mission within forbidden waters. After months of painstaking preparation, the necessary permits were painstakingly arranged. The cutting-edge gear was meticulously shipped, and the team finally began their descent into what many still believe to be just a persistent myth. Still, word got out. A grainy, leaked image of their vessel mysteriously surfaced on social media, captioned with a cryptic, tantalizing phrase, "Back to where the Pharaoh fell." That was all it took. Whispers turned to online chatter, then to roaring online debate. And before long, the mission reached major headlines. Ron Wyatt's name, long a source of ridicule in academic circles, suddenly began trending again. Forums exploded, YouTube channels buzzed with speculation, and even mainstream media outlets, unable to ignore the rising tide of curiosity, found themselves reluctantly covering the story. Among the most vocal commentators was none other than Greg Gutfeld, known for his sharp tongue and his biting skepticism of official narratives. Gutfeld didn't hide his intrigue. On a segment of his primetime show, he quipped with a mischievous grin, "If these guys find chariot wheels in the red, see, then I want a refund on my high school history textbook." Seriously, why is this stuff always left out? The line sparked ferocious debate, dividing audiences. Was this the beginning of something truly real, or just another dive into religious fantasy? Whatever the truth was, the divers were already deep beneath the waves, pushing further into the murky blue, about to challenge the thin, fragile line between legend and history. At the heart of it all stood one seismic question: what really happened during the Exodus? A biblical mystery that still bitterly divides scholars, devout believers, and hardened skeptics alike. The crossing of the Red Sea is arguably one of the most powerful, dramatic moments in all of Scripture, a foundational narrative of deliverance and divine intervention. In the ancient telling, the Israelite people, fleeing from generations of brutal enslavement, found themselves trapped. Pharaoh's advancing, relentless army thundering behind them, and the vast, impenetrable waters of the Red Sea stretching. Out before them, an impossible barrier. Then, as vividly recounted in the book of Exodus, a miracle unfolds. Moses lifts his staff towards the heavens. The very sea parts and immense towering walls of water rise on either side, forming a divine, impossible corridor through which the Israelites flee to freedom. When Ramesses the Great's chariots, brimming with vengeful soldiers, foolishly follow them into the chasm. The walls of water crash down, swallowing them whole, their screams silenced by the crushing waves. For generations, this moment has stood as a towering symbol of miraculous deliverance, unyielding divine justice, and the transcendent power of faith. It's more than just a Bible story. It's a foundational pillar of Judeo-Christian belief, referenced reverently in churches, synagogues, and even mosques across the globe. From hushed Sunday school classrooms to cinematic blockbusters, the Red Sea crossing is one of the most retold, cherished miracles in human history. Yet, beneath the faith and reverence lies a profound mystery that has long divided scholars. Did it really happen? The Bible offers few clear geographical coordinates, leaving theologians and archaeologists to debate the precise route of the Exodus for centuries. Some argue the crossing occurred in the shallow, reedy marshes of Egypt's Nile Delta, perhaps the Sea of Reeds. Others believe it happened in the Gulf of Suez, a more accessible yet still debated location. But among the most controversial, persistent, and now increasingly compelling theories is this: that the crossing took place not in Egypt proper, but further east at a remote, distinct beach called Nuweiba, nestled in the Gulf of Aqaba. Supporters of this theory point to the area's astonishing topography. Nuweiba Beach is unusually wide and flat, perfectly capable of accommodating a large, fleeing population. And beneath its waves lies a crucial, often overlooked underwater land bridge, a natural ramp connecting the Sinai Peninsula directly to the Arabian side. Could this impossibly convenient, submerged path have been the very route the Israelites used to cross? Mainstream historians, however, have largely remained unconvinced, often with a dismissive air. Scholars like Israel Finkelstein argue, with academic certainty, that the Exodus story, including the Red Sea miracle, is not historical fact, but rather a powerful cultural myth, deliberately forged during the Babylonian exile to galvanize and unite a nascent national identity. According to this prevailing view, the story was never meant to be literal truth, but a symbolic narrative of liberation and divine protection during times of profound oppression. And there's one glaring, persistent issue that critics always return to: their ultimate trump card, the crushing absence of hard, undisputed archaeological evidence. Over the decades, countless expeditions have sought that elusive proof: undiscovered Hebrew camps, remnants of Egyptian pursuit, definitive archaeological markers. Every single one has failed. These repeated disappointments have only strengthened skepticism, leading most academic institutions to distance themselves from the topic entirely, branding it as fringe speculation. But what if something is down there? What if, despite decades of academic dismissal, the ocean floor truly holds a secret? People believe it does. And that belief was fueled and, for many, confirmed by someone whose name is always brought up when discussing the Red Sea crossing: Ron Wyatt. He was the man who first dared to say, with unwavering conviction, "I found the wheels of the Pharaoh." He was the self-taught explorer who sparked both fascination and fury in equal measure, the controversial figure behind the audacious, unverified claims. In the esoteric world of biblical archaeology, few names trigger as much fervent debate and outright scorn as Ron Wyatt. He wasn't a tenured professor. He never held a prestigious archaeological license. He possessed no formal academic background in history or anthropology. In fact, for most of his life, Ron Wyatt was a humble nurse anesthetist working out of Tennessee, a quiet, unassuming medical professional. But something else burned inside him, a deep, unwavering conviction that the Bible was not just a spiritual guide, but a literal, undeniable historical record, waiting to be proved true by physical evidence. In the tumultuous 1970s, Wyatt quietly stepped away from his medical profession, embarking on a self-funded journey that would lead him to some of the most controversial, astounding, and widely ridiculed claims in religious archaeology. He funded his own travels, often scraping together whatever meager funds he could from friends, small church communities, and anonymous private donations, driven by an almost messianic zeal. But Ron didn't set out to gain fame or recognition. He truly believed God had called him to uncover the physical evidence behind the Bible's greatest miracles, to provide tangible proof for the faithful. Wyatt's early exploits took him to remote corners of the world. He journeyed to Turkey, where he controversially claimed to have found the resting place of Noah's Ark on Mount Ararat, citing a strange boat-shaped anomaly. Later, he pointed to Mount Sinai in Saudi Arabia, asserting it still bore the blackened, scorched marks of God's fiery presence. Each dramatic discovery brought him closer to notoriety and, inevitably, to widespread mockery. He was either a visionary truth seeker, blessed by divine insight, or a delusional amateur, a dangerous fantasist, depending on who you asked. But nothing stirred global attention and academic ire quite like his 1978 dive in the Red Sea. That year, Wyatt traveled to the eastern coast of the Sinai Peninsula, specifically targeting a place called Nuweiba Beach, following a hunch deeply rooted in scripture and geography. With only basic diving equipment, limited funding, and little formal support, he plunged into the turquoise waters of the Gulf of Aqaba. And according to Wyatt, what he found beneath the waves changed everything. He claimed to have seen, with his own eyes, coral-encrusted shapes that uncannily resembled ancient Egyptian chariot wheels. He described seeing 4, 6, and even 8-spoked formations, miraculously preserved in stone-like coral, their intricate designs still visible. He even claimed to have seen scattered human femurs and skulls, some allegedly crushed by heavy impact, signs of a violent, watery demise. More tantalizingly, he described spotting a distinct circular object shimmering under the water, unlike the others, possibly a gold-plated chariot wheel. More than once, Wyatt pointed to the submerged underwater land bridge between Nuweiba and the Arabian Peninsula, convinced that this was the exact miraculous route Moses led the Israelites through. The timing, the location, the specific formations, to him it was irrefutable, divine proof hiding in plain sight. Yet, when pressed for definitive evidence, Wyatt consistently faltered, his claims undermined by a frustrating lack of tangible proof. He had no certified independent photographs, no peer-reviewed papers published in reputable journals. And for decades, no physical artifacts ever surfaced from the deep. He was routinely denied access by many official archaeological bodies, their doors slamming shut against his unverified claims. Even when allowed to speak, most academic journals refused to touch his work, dismissing it as lacking scientific rigor. They insisted his tools were primitive, his methods amateurish, and his claims relied too heavily on visual interpretation and personal conviction rather than empirical data. Still, Ron Wyatt's story, despite the glaring absence of concrete evidence, refused to die. For decades, independent researchers, a dedicated band of faith-based adventurers, and fringe theorists held onto his words, a beacon of hope against academic skepticism. His mysterious photos, grainy and often ambiguous, circulated in small Christian publications and low-budget documentaries, passed hand to hand like sacred relics. While skeptics dismissed him as a fantasist, a charlatan, or simply delusional, believers saw a prophet in modern times, an individual chosen to reveal God's truth to a doubting world. But one haunting question lingered, whispered in online forums and debated in living rooms. If Ron Wyatt truly saw those coral-encrusted chariot wheels and human remains, why weren't they brought to the surface? Why wasn't the proof undeniable? That question takes us deeper into one of the most puzzling, frustrating, and ultimately heartbreaking aspects of this underwater enigma. According to Ron Wyatt, the unforgiving waters of the Gulf of Aqaba keep their secrets well, guarding them with a silent, relentless power. Those secrets included what he believed to be the physical proof of ancient chariot wheels, buried under centuries of sand, salt, and relentless coral growth. But here's the enduring mystery that continues to haunt the debate, frustrating both believers and skeptics alike. If those wheels were real, if they were truly relics of Pharaoh Ramesses I's drowned army, why aren't they proudly displayed in any museum? Why haven't they rewritten history? Wyatt had his answers, explanations that, while plausible to his followers, further fueled the doubts of his critics. He claimed 4 key reasons for the frustrating silence and the conspicuous absence of artifacts. The first was the suffocating grip of coral encrustation. The wheels and bones, he asserted, were completely covered in hardened ancient coral, which had miraculously preserved their fragile shapes but rendered them impossibly fragile to touch. Any attempt to remove them, he feared, would shatter the objects into useless rubble, turning potential proof into mere dust. Underwater metallurgists later documented the coral-encrusted form of a wheel with dimensions similar to ancient Egyptian. Artifacts even detecting metal within the raised hubs now completely covered in coral, lending a sliver of credence to Wyatt's seemingly outlandish claims. The second reason he gave was the immense risk of destruction upon removal. The underwater environment, he argued, had become their coffin and their protector. Once exposed to light, air, or even the gentlest human handling, the delicate remains would collapse, disintegrating into nothing but fragments of mystery, lost forever. The third, and perhaps most obvious reason, was the ironclad grip of Egyptian law. Wyatt said he faced firm, unyielding legal barriers. The Gulf of Aqaba, bordering Egypt, falls under strict archaeological protection. Removing historical artifacts from its depths without explicit governmental permission is not just forbidden, but a criminal offense, punishable by severe penalties. According to him, this made even photographing or publicly disseminating some of his findings nearly impossible without triggering immediate legal backlash and jeopardizing any future access. The fourth, and arguably most intriguing claim of all, revolved around a fabled golden chariot wheel. Wyatt insisted that he had come across a strange, shimmering wheel-shaped object unlike the rest. Unlike the other coral-encrusted relics, this one was smooth, gleaming, and it shimmered with an unmistakable golden hue, as if it had been perfectly plated. According to his dramatic story, he turned this extraordinary artifact over to Egyptian authorities for safekeeping. Believing it was too precious to risk. But here's where the tale truly begins to unravel for skeptics. There are no verified photographs of this golden wheel, no official museum listings, no public record of its existence. There's no official report, no Egyptian display, no credible follow-up whatsoever. To skeptics, this isn't just suspicious, it's damning. Without a shred of verifiable proof, many dismiss Wyatt's entire account as fantasy wrapped in wishful thinking, a narrative crafted purely for belief. If such an artifact had truly existed, they argue, it would have shaken the archaeological world to its core, forcing an immediate reevaluation of ancient history. And yet, the story refuses to fade. Because even with its infuriating gaps and persistent doubts, it speaks to a deeper human desire. A primal need to see faith made real, to find tangible evidence where history and myth collide. And this is precisely why, after decades of silence, those modern divers set out, armed with cutting-edge technology, to find out if what Ron Wyatt had supposedly discovered was still there. Why now? Why, after decades of academic dismissal and the long shadow of Ron Wyatt's controversial legacy, did this new expedition brave these same forbidden waters? What's fueling this sudden, surging wave of renewed interest in the Exodus and the archaeology behind it? The answer lies in the dramatic resurgence of biblical archaeology, which has returned to the spotlight with a vengeance in the last few years, driven by both spiritual hunger and technological revolution. From whispers of Noah's Ark on Mount Ararat, reigniting the ancient flood narrative, to compelling claims that the real Mount Sinai lies not in Egypt, but deep within Saudi Arabia, to tantalizing rumors of the Ark of the Covenant being traced. to hidden locations in Ethiopia, faith-based discoveries are making major headlines once again, capturing global imagination. When news broke of modern divers equipped with the latest advancements, reinvestigating the very same stretch of the Red Sea that Ron Wyatt once controversially explored, something profound shifted. People who hadn't set foot in a church in years found themselves staring at the sky, wondering what else might be true. Some said it felt like a sign, a divine beckoning. Christian influencers across the US took to platforms like TikTok and YouTube, their messages going viral, proclaiming, "It is undeniable proof of biblical prophecy." One viral preacher declared, with booming conviction, "God is revealing the truth in the last days." But it's not just a surge of faith that's fueling this dramatic rediscovery. It's an unprecedented technological revolution. In Wyatt's day, he relied on crude diving gear, primitive handheld cameras, and the unreliable power of word of mouth. Today's explorers wield underwater drones capable of navigating the darkest depths, high-definition sonar scanners that map seafloors with astonishing clarity, AI-assisted image processing that can discern patterns invisible to the human eye, and satellite data that provides unprecedented topographical insights. What once required months of blind searching, relying on guesswork and sheer luck, can now be done with pinpoint accuracy in days, even hours. This technological leap has done more than just make diving safer. It has made once-dismissed missions plausible, transforming them from speculative ventures into verifiable scientific endeavors. Salvage divers are no longer hobbyists. Many are ex-Navy trained scientists or private contractors armed with corporate funding and missionary zeal. With access to these superior tools, they can do what Wyatt never could: potentially prove the Chariots were indeed under the sea. Ron Wyatt's work, once dismissed as fringe and relegated to the outer reaches of academia, is now being revisited with new eyes, a new seriousness. Some suggest that this sudden wave of rediscovery is no accident, that perhaps these underwater clues, these ancient echoes, were deliberately left for this very generation, for a time of doubt, division, and profound decline in faith. That maybe the pieces are resurfacing now because humanity is finally ready, truly ready to see. If that's the case, then what did those modern divers actually find? What shocking truths emerged from the depths? The impossible, it seems, has just been proven possible. The seasoned salvage divers, armed with cutting-edge HD underwater cameras and advanced sonar technology, finally unearthed what may be the most extraordinary archaeological discovery of the century. Their perilous mission took them directly to the very coordinates that Ron Wyatt had meticulously marked over 4 decades ago, the precise spot where he controversially claimed to have discovered ancient Egyptian chariot wheels in the Red Sea. At the time, his findings were dismissed by virtually everyone as little more than fantasy, the delusion of an amateur. But what these modern divers uncovered proved that Wyatt, despite his flaws and his lack of credentials, wasn't so wrong after all. As their advanced cameras plunged beneath the murky depths, a haunting, almost unbelievable image began to take shape on their screens. There were symmetrical structures, partially obscured by centuries of marine growth and layers of coral, yet with sharp, unmistakable edges, like the spoke patterns of an ancient chariot wheel. As they drew closer, the outline became clearer, more defined. There were at least 3 distinct formations of what could only be ancient Egyptian wheels, still holding their intricate shape despite being encrusted with years of tenacious marine growth. The divers, with their high-resolution cameras capturing every astonishing detail, then made a discovery that sent shivers down their spines. One of the wheels, although covered in coral, showed a faint, undeniable gold-like glint, a shimmering, unnatural gleam that no natural element could have possibly caused. It was corroded, yes, but something about its untouched surface and its incredible preservation suggested it was no ordinary relic of the sea. This could be an artifact that defies everything modern archaeology has ever accepted. As they continued their descent, the unsettling discoveries mounted, painting a picture of ancient catastrophe. More chariot remnants began to appear, strewn across the sea floor. There were fragments of what appeared to be human and horse bones, scattered amidst pieces of corroded metal. Broken weaponry, perhaps. Soon enough, other objects that lent chilling weight to Wyatt's once controversial theory started to surface, hinting at a mass drowning. "This is not good," one of the divers' voices crackled through the radio, laden with a profound sense of dread. For devout believers, this was nothing short of a divine confirmation, the undeniable proof of a biblical miracle, witnessed and validated by modern technology. Could these finds really be the remnants of the Pharaoh's drowned army? They asked, their voices filled with awe. They certainly looked like it. And for hardened skeptics, the implications were chilling. The thought that the world might have been wrong all along, that a foundational story of faith could indeed be literal history. This discovery, if fully verified, could rewrite history as we know it, transforming the debate about the Exodus from a mythical story into an undeniable, terrifying truth. But why was it not good? What chilling implication caused the diver to voice such a profound sense of alarm? At first, the divers thought they were simply retracing Ron Wyatt's footsteps, validating his overlooked claims. But the next thing they found changed everything, turning their scientific investigation into a horrifying dive into a watery tomb. Drone footage captured the first signs of the horror. A half-buried horse skull, tangled in seagrass, resting awkwardly, unnaturally on the seafloor. When it was painstakingly lifted for analysis, DNA results later confirmed what few expected. It matched the genetic profile of an ancient Egyptian breed once used exclusively in royal chariotry, a breed long extinct. That was the first shock, but it was merely the prelude. A voice from one of the divers crackled through the radio, filled with a palpable sense of unease. "This is not good." At first, the crew on the surface thought he was referring to equipment, trouble, perhaps a technical malfunction in the oppressive depths. But when the feed from his helmet cam streamed through, everything changed, plunging them into a chilling, horrifying reality. They had found human remains. Not one, not a few scattered bones, but hundreds. There were skulls, ribs, and vertebrae, entangled with coral-covered spears of corroded metal and what looked like shattered wooden frames, the remnants of chariots and their unfortunate occupants. The layout wasn't random, not the haphazard scattering from a typical shipwreck. These were clusters of bodies, men, and horses, who seemed to have been fleeing in one terrifying direction before a sudden, overwhelming force caught them all at once. What was once a meticulous underwater investigation suddenly felt like a dive into a mass grave, a chilling snapshot of death frozen in time, preserved in the crushing darkness of the deep. Just like the sacred scriptures implied, hundreds, if not thousands, of Egyptian soldiers might have perished, drowned by the Red Sea, following Moses and his people on Pharaoh Ramesses II's relentless orders. The Red Sea had indeed become their collective grave. However, no hard evidence immediately confirmed that the skulls once belonged to people who had lived at the exact same time as Moses, leaving a sliver of doubt for the most ardent skeptics. So far, the chariot wheels remained the biggest, most compelling piece of evidence in the hands of those who had never doubted Ron Wyatt. However, the remains were so delicate that even brushing them with a fingertip risked breaking them apart. Saltwater corrosion, thousands of years of relentless tidal force, and the crushing pressure of being submerged under layers of silt had taken their toll. These weren't artifacts ready for museum display, gleaming under spotlights. They would never go back on land, too fragile to survive the transition. They were ghosts, crumbling under the immense weight of time. And yet, that made them paradoxically more authentic, more profoundly impactful. Metallurgists brought in for remote consultation confirmed that some of the metal fragments displayed metallurgy consistent with late Bronze Age Egypt, adding another layer of scientific credibility. Coral incrustation made them impossible to clean without destroying them, but the outlines captured by advanced light sonar perfectly matched the 4- and 6-spoke design of ancient Egyptian military wheels. The divers even found one axle fragment, clearly identifiable, lodged in a seafloor crevice, a grim testament to the chariot's sudden, violent end. But it wasn't just the artifacts that haunted the team. It was the haunting arrangement of the bones, a mass of bodies of men, horses, and shattered metal, all lying in a single, straight path beneath the water. Like a snapshot of death frozen in time, the divers hadn't just found history, they had found a mass grave. The moment the haunting footage of this impossible discovery surfaced, social media ignited with a ferocious mix of astonishment and skepticism, a digital firestorm of debate. Some viewers were immediately convinced, proclaiming they were witnessing a monumental, undeniable discovery, the definitive proof of biblical prophecy. Others, however, dismissed it outright as an elaborate hoax, a sophisticated fabrication designed to mislead. Notably, controversial commentator Greg Gutfeld weighed in again, this time with a mixture of shock and profound contemplation, stating, "This is shocking. Either it's a stunning hoax or the history books are about to get rewritten permanently." As the video gained traction, reaching millions, something unsettling happened. Attempts were made to remove the clips from various platforms, leading to widespread speculation that certain authorities, for reasons unknown, didn't want the footage. Widely circulated, as if a truth too big to handle was being suppressed. Despite these efforts, a few copies of the raw footage continued to circulate, fueling ongoing debates and discussions online, creating an almost mythical status around the disappearing content. The footage's sudden, unexplained disappearance from major platforms only intensified public curiosity, breathing new life into conspiracy theories. Some speculated the removals were due to copyright violations or legitimate concerns over misinformation, while others were convinced there was a deliberate, concerted effort to suppress the content, to bury the truth. Regardless of the reason, the limited availability of the video added an undeniable air of mystery and urgency to the discussions, making the elusive footage even more desirable. Amidst the frenzy, heated debates erupted over the video's authenticity, dividing online communities. Skeptics pointed to the lack of verifiable official sources and the video's sudden, almost unheralded emergence as reasons for doubt. Supporters, however, cited the incredibly detailed visuals, the consistent historical context, and the chilling parallels to biblical accounts as compelling, undeniable evidence. The controversy even drew in other public figures, with some echoing Gutfeld's sentiments and others urging extreme caution until more information became available. Crucially, a new wave of archaeologists, both believers and skeptics, began calling for a formal reopening of Ron Wyatt's original notes, his meticulously kept yet long ignored research. For years, his findings had been summarily dismissed. As fantasy, his lack of credentials a stain too large to overcome. But now, his precise coordinates had delivered something tangible, something that could be undeniably real. So, his other audacious claims, long buried under ridicule, suddenly deserved a serious second look, a reevaluation free from prejudice. As some in the archaeological community declared, there is too much managed information in archaeology, and in other so-called disciplines of science, hinting at a deliberate suppression of uncomfortable truths. In the lingering absence of official statements or confirmations from mainstream bodies, the profound mystery surrounding the footage persisted. Whether a groundbreaking revelation or an elaborate fabrication, the video had undeniably captured the world's attention, reigniting age-old debates and leaving millions desperate for answers, hungry for the truth. But the discovery of the wheels and bones in the Red Sea might only be the beginning of a far larger, more profound revelation. Because the region, and indeed the world, may still be hiding far more, and those secrets could be even more world-shaking than a drowned army. The divers' discovery has done more than just rattle skeptics or thrill the faithful. It has cracked open a door to the past that may never shut again, fundamentally challenging our understanding of history and faith. If Egyptian chariot wheels and human remains truly rest on the seafloor, where the Exodus story says they should, if this ancient account is literally true, then what else have we tragically overlooked? What other ancient truths are waiting in the dust, the stone, and the deep, patiently waiting for modern eyes and modern technology to uncover them? Around the world, biblical archaeologists, independent research groups, and passionate church communities are awakening with a new, fervent urgency. Ron Wyatt may have been mocked for his unconventional methods, but he was never dismissed for a lack of passion. He truly believed the Bible held real, historical answers, hidden in plain sight, waiting to be revealed. His lifelong mission wasn't to prove himself, but to preserve a legacy, to provide tangible evidence for generations of believers. And now, others are picking up precisely where he left off, armed with tools he could only dream of. Mount Sinai in Saudi Arabia, which has long been debated and largely dismissed by mainstream scholars, is drawing renewed, intense interest. Teams are mobilizing, equipped with state-of-the-art drones, advanced 3D mapping capabilities, and satellite heat scans, seeking a mountain that burns with ancient fire. In Turkey, where some ancient traditions assert Noah's Ark rests petrified in stone on Mount Ararat, fresh expeditions are being launched, driven by newfound hope and undeniable technological prowess. There's even a profound stir around the dead. See, where persistent rumors of lost biblical scrolls, hidden in yet undiscovered caves, have pushed a new wave of explorers back into the rugged Judean wilderness. But it's not just boots on the ground anymore, it's brains in the cloud. Artificial intelligence is now being employed to scan ancient tunnels, uncover submerged underwater shelves, and locate forgotten tombs, detecting patterns, anomalies, and buried structures that are utterly invisible to the human eye. We are entering an age where history is no longer dug up by shovels alone, but uncovered by complex code, revolutionary machine learning, and the relentless curiosity of those who believe that truth doesn't vanish, but patiently waits. What does this mean for our past, and more importantly, for our future? It means the established timeline of human history may be less certain than we ever thought. It means ancient texts, once relegated to the realm of myth and allegory, might be far more than mere stories. And it means the delicate line between faith and verifiable fact may not be a line at all, but a bridge submerged long ago, now miraculously rising again from the depths, inviting us to cross into a reality far more incredible than we ever dared to imagine.